All right, let's call to order the Flood Control District work session agenda for Tuesday, September 30th. And we're meeting at the Board of Supervisors hearing room on Melody Lane in Bisbee, Arizona. The order of deletion of any item on this agenda is subject to modification of the meeting, and any item listed is open for discussion. Please note that some attachments may differ from those posted online. Members of the board, the Flood Control District Board of Directors will attend in person or via remote conferencing. Members of the public may also attend the meeting via Microsoft Teams or the mobile app. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comment will not be taken. We'll begin with roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2.
Gomez is
And
here.
District 3, Antoner is here. All supervisors are present with 2 in person and Mr. Crosby attending online. All right, so let's go to Ms. Watkins. Kick us off.
Morning, board. I'm going to give updates on the projects we have, and Cy Miller with J.E. Fuller is going to talk about the Wilcox Watershed Study, the in-depth on the watershed study.
Okay.
So this is the groundwater recharge Wilcox Regional Flood Mitigation Project that we're doing. This is to analyze locations that will dual purpose recharge and flood control in the Wilcox Basin. And this is being funded by a WIFA grant for $187,000 and flood control districts for $112,000. And now we will go into Cy's presentation. Okay, we need to change the a different presentation.
Brick from, not WIFA.
It's brick.
Yes, brick,
Yes,
FEMA brick.
It's being a brick pad. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Mini grant.
I think the program no longer exists. I think. But anyway, hi, Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me. My name is Cy Miller. I'm an engineer in Tucson. I work for a firm, J.E. Fuller, Hydrology and Geomorphology. I'm here with Lindsay, I think is online, a sub-consultant of ours who's doing some work in parallel to what we're doing, but I'm here to talk today about using a computer program called Flow2D to perform H&H, hydrology and hydraulics modeling for the Wilcox Basin. Okay. So the Wilcox Basin, we're all familiar, I'm sure, with it, but shown in pink is the watershed boundary that contributes flow to the Wilcox Basin, the Wilcox Playa being a closed basin lake. You know, in this case, we have no outflow, so to speak, other than just inflow to the playa. And that area, it measures about 1,700 square miles contributing flow from the watershed. For this study, we used a computer program, and I'll get into the details, called Flow2D. And Flow2D, if you all might remember the computer game, video game Q*bert from a long time ago, Flow2D essentially breaks up the terrain into a gridded mesh of square cells, and then we rain on the top. Say we rain on the top cell, and then the rain falls down according to slope, topography, slope, and then the rainfall runoff parameterizations that we assign. So this is somewhat cutting edge technology. It's getting more and more advanced as we build our abilities to use it. I'm going to go. Oh,
why not Flow 3D? Why only 2D?
A computational time. Flow 3D exists.
Oh,
however,
it exists.
Yeah, it's
a pricier version.
It is pricier, and it doesn't do all the, it doesn't model bridges. Say, for instance, if you wanted to do a Flow 3D bridge, you'd have to do just the bridge. You wouldn't be able to do miles and miles and then a bridge and then something else. That would just take forever.
Right, it's very higher fidelity.
Correct, yeah. And 2D, in our case, does what we're looking for pretty well, I'd say, yeah, in general. You don't get that much out of the 3D that you wouldn't get out of the 2D, I think. So, and also, too, the 2D refers to breaking it into grid cells. There is that Z component, so it is a 3D approximation, I guess you could say, of it. So it is 3D in a way, but it's termed 2D modeling. So our 1,700 square miles, in this project, we broke that 1,700 square miles into 13 individual models that run on their own. And we broke the whole 1,700 square mile area into 40 by 40 foot grids. So it's very, very, there's a lot of data here.
That's some pretty damn high fidelity, 40 by 40.
Yes, yeah. And so you can see the
That's just
table.
room.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, smaller, yeah, like right here, yeah.
Yeah.
So, the table shows the number of grid cells per model, and this runs in a cascading fashion where we run A, that it contributes inflow to B, we use the outflow from A, and then the rain on B to run B, and then so on and so on as you step down the watershed in a cascading fashion. I think we might have a slide on those transfers, but everything essentially flows into the playa, and the playa is what we term an outflow condition. So everything is discharging into the playa, and after that, we're not doing much with it. We're planning to do much with it.
Well, this is a pretty good, just this graphic right here. So this shows you basically A flows to B, B to C, C to D, D to E, and then D flows to H and I, and then F to G, and then G to H and I, and then on the top there, it's the same thing.
Right.
J, K, L, and M then flow into I. So that's pretty.
It took a week
This takes a week to run.
to run the model.
To run all
24/7.
Yeah. Yeah, they're set up to run. And so, say for E, for instance, does have outflow nodes that go into H and then also into I. So you have to run E and then partition off those by geographic location so that they can run those next downstream models. We refer to this as cascading. And I owe a lot to my coworker in Tempe, Hui. He's kind of the mastermind for some of this stuff. He put a lot of this together, but I'm here today to present.
What it also kind of shows, I guess, is the north of the dry lake bed is relatively flat.
Yep. Yeah.
And then the A flowing in and F flowing in are more mountainous.
Yeah.
So you got this really, well, that's Upper Valley, I guess, right? The Upper Valley.
And that's Chiricahuas. I mean, that's Turkey Creek would be in A. A lot of the larger streams coming out of the mountains would be in A. And then M. Say if you look where the letter M is, that's Ash Creek is kind of an axial drainage between two mountain fronts. That's more of a typical desert basin range feature that I would say. An axial stream in between two mountains. The Turkey Creek and all those other things, as it gets out towards all the center pivots and everything like that, all the agricultural areas south of the playa, it gets a little more dispersed where you get, I'm sure you're all well aware, you get flow in the roads and you get flow, concentrating in places where it might not have naturally gone.
So
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
And that is, where is the county line? Where is our north boundary county line compared to the pink lines?
Oh, yeah.
It's on around that M. I think it's around that, a little north of that M label, because we're following, geographic and topographic divides and not political divides. To do this model accurately, we had to model that area in Grant County.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah. But it's just north of the M there is where the line would be?
I want to guess,
Okay.
yeah.
I understand that, so I would just point out to my colleagues that when it comes time to make decisions about water basins or any such structures that cross existing political lines, we need to be very careful about that.
Yeah, talk to our
That
buddies
concludes my
up north in Graham County.
And I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say that Lindsay's part that looks at more the recharge focused stuff that would come into play when we get into building features. I want to say that they cut that off at the county line.
Yeah, we did. We only looked at.
Yeah. So on the southern side there, which basically looks like we're 191 and 186 intersect right there in Sunzona.
Mhm.
Is that the
That's the kind of the.
and then that's what? That's the Douglas Basin south of that?
That's the Douglas Basin,
Okay.
right around 181.
It's also worth pointing out too that these are
181, I'm sorry. Yeah, 181, 191.
these are surface divides. If you look at the groundwater map, which is defined by ADWR, it would look a little different on that south end because there's some interplay between the groundwater basin and the surface water basin, so that I don't know how to describe
They
it.
don't match.
Yeah, they don't always match. Yeah, and they don't. in
Mr.
this
Chair, I
case.
have another
Sure.
related comment that what I had in mind most specifically and most recently is AMAs.
Right.
Mhm.
And typically an AMA is going to have something to do with either the surface or the subsurface flows that are claimed. Just to keep it in mind.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Okay. Okay. So to do this model, to put it all together, Cochise County, along with many other counties, don't have direct guidance for doing this, but we defer to the ADOT manual, ADOT methods. There's a lot of information in here, but thanks to the county's acquisition through USGS of the 1-meter LiDAR a few years ago, we were able to put this together and get our topographic information from that high accuracy data set and a highly precise data set. Rainfall, we went with a type 2 storm, SCS. This might not mean much to you if you're not a hydrologist. And we looked at the 100-year, 24-hour storm. So that's a typical design storm.
What's the type for that? Is it type 5? What's it?
100-year, 24-hour?
Yeah.
Well, so you can...
A type 2 is what?
Is just the temporal distribution of the rain across that 24 hours.
Okay.
So you could assume a standard, you could assume a uniform linear, but we all know that the rain starts slow and then it gets to a more intense period and then tapers off. So I'm
just getting at, so versus the routine rainstorm is a type 2 is routine your average rainstorm?
It's a design storm.
Okay. And then what the 100-year or 500-year
24-hour storm is somewhat like what we had this last weekend because those rains were going continuous.
Mhm. Yeah.
Somewhat like that.
Okay.
It
So
wasn't a 100-year storm.
But we don't categorize them like the Fujita scale, right? We don't say this is a type 1 storm, type 2 storm, type 3 storm, type 4 storm, type 5 storm.
No, when we just get the rainfall amount and then figure out if it was 100-year or 25-year.
That's based on how much rain comes down, and you
Yeah.
call it, if it's above a certain amount, it's a 100-year storm. If it's
Yeah.
below, it's a routine storm.
Yeah.
depending on the duration, yeah. And NOAA has statistics on the entire U.S., Arizona, and so they have a statistic for your precipitation frequency. So if you get a certain amount of rain in a certain period of time, you can look at that and look at that statistical table and say, okay,
That seems like a weak way to do it, because what if you get 3 of those 100-year storms in the same?
And you could.
Yeah, then they wouldn't be 100-year storms; they'd be 30-year storms.
Hydrology
This is
is
hydrology.
science.
Oh, okay, all right. Just doesn't make sense, I guess.
Right.
I would rather go with the Fujita scale. We could call it the Watkins scale. I don't care. You just like, this is a Watkins 1, which is a nice little drizzle. Watkins 2 is a heavy rain that makes a couple puddles, but Watkins 3 is you got a little bit of a river running through your front yard. Watkins 4 is you got to start evacuating the dogs and the cats, and Watkins 5 is I'll man the lifeboats. We're getting out of here. That's what I'm kind of.
That's why when we talk about a 10-year storm and a 25-year storm, it depends on you have 1 inch in 30 minutes or you have 1 inch over 24 hours, you're going to get different flow off of that.
Sure, it soaks in
Yes.
nice and
And so
easy
that-
versus it doesn't have time to soak in and it goes.
And the 24-hour storm is typically what we get when we get hurricanes remnants. And so that's typically where you get the higher flow rates. But because it's for a higher flow rate for the whole basin, opposed as a microburst storm where you get 2 inches of rain in one.
But how do you account for I think it was like 7, 8 years ago, we had this long, slow monsoon and it saturated all the ground. So then when we had the big rainstorm, which wasn't really that big of a rainstorm, but the ground was already
Yes.
soaked, and that rain, that just
Mhm.
created all sorts of havoc because the ground had become
Already.
saturated slowly over time. But then when the big rain finally hit, it was, like I couldn't even get to the house. The dip there at Dragon Road right off I-10 was flooded with like 2 feet of water flowing through there. And I haven't seen water in that thing in 2 years. It's been dry.
That's why hydrology is a science that is hard to pin down to one answer.
I mean, we had a lot of rain this year too.
Yes.
I would say, and I haven't, not once did it flow across Dragon Road. No water ever made it across the road.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that quickly means that most of that water is soaked in,
It infiltrates into the upper
which is good,
soil.
which is good that it's infiltrating, but it's just,
Report that Douglas was at 184 or 164% over their total rainfall.
They've had a lot of rain in Douglas this year.
And then Service, it was like
Yes.
64%. So is that just that's, I think it was 284 and 364. I can't remember. So when you're talking about that, that's just in how much flowed that this season compared to other averages,
How
right?
much rain that season, not how much was flowing off. Not
Just
how much
how much
flowed,
fell.
but how much fell.
Okay.
It was higher than average.
So when we talk about the 100-year, 24-hour storm, that's one event. This is all just a simulation of one
A one
big
event, like what,
Yeah.
a Friday,
Right, yeah.
right? Like
Right.
I thought we
Yeah.
had Friday.
Yes. Okay.
And then antecedent moisture conditions, that's what you were referring to is, the ground's wet before. There are certain assumptions that we build into the model based on, parameter tables that we get. To look at something like that would be a special kind of case, but this is just sort of by the book runoff hydraulic, I'd say. Infiltration, we use the green ant method, which takes each one of those little Kubert cells and assigns it with, based on how much rain falls, how much goes into the ground, how much runs off. Manning's N is a measure of roughness. Higher Manning's N is higher roughness, say in like vegetated or other rough channel conditions. Upper mountain regions would be high roughness. And then we simulated hydraulic structures just by burning the terrain. So if there was a roadway embankment, but we knew that there was a culvert or a bridge there, we just depressed that one grid so that the water can flow through as we know it does. And then we did some parameterization, calibration is a tough word to say, but verification of our model based on other comparison methods so that we could get comfortable and confident in our numbers. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Oh, there it is. So this is the rainfall distribution. The type 2 is the red one, sort of in the middle. The ADOT method calls for the frequency storm, which is the blue one. But you can kind of see that it's 90-some% of the rainfall is happening in about a 7-hour span. So what we were seeing with this was really, really high discharge amounts. But so we did a little bit of playing with the model, modeling type 1 and type 2 storms, which are also standard and accepted temporal distributions for this. And we ended up with a type 2 because it compared better to our comparison verification methods. And then this map on the left shows the transfer of flows through the basins models as we.
why not make like a dry lake bed P and have everything flow into that? It looks like everything's flowing into I.
Essentially, H. So H has its own. Yeah, the small arrows maybe are not so representative. What we didn't really model this. We didn't really model the rain on the playa, and when it goes into the playa, and
Well, it wouldn't be doing anything, but it would flow into the playa. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So why aren't the blue arrows pointing?
I suppose there's an ultimate outflow boundary condition around the perimeter of the playa that's maybe not represented well.
Because I mean, I was just out there with you, was it 2 weeks ago on Taylor Road, right? Everything flows into that
To the playa.
playa. Yeah. So, I mean,
It does that in the model. Maybe this picture doesn't.
Okay. All right, that's just-
Yeah.
just curious. I would think,
All those arrows will get to the playa.
right.
Yeah.
It just seemed kind of weird.
You're right. Let's get too far. Okay, so our results for this.
Yeah, this is the cool part.
So yeah, and I agree. Before the topographic data was available, and before our computer and modeling practices are where they are today, this would have been incomprehensible to do. This is a week's worth of model time on today's computers. 10 years ago would have been who knows how long. So this is really cool. I do think it's cool, and I agree. And so what our model results predict, again, on that 40 by 40 foot scale grid, for every grid, we have then a depth of flow. And that accounts for the rainfall that falls in that grid, and then also the flow that is contributed by all the upstream grids above it. Okay, and it does go in, although it is a square grid, it does go, the flow can go in 8 directions, meaning that it can go across the corners, across the diagonals, I guess, if you will. And then with those, we string together strings of nodes to represent what we call floodplain cross sections, and that's what's shown by the graph. The mapping shows depth mapping, but then the lines circled show the hydrographs that we're predicting from the model. And then from that, we always talk about peak discharge. Say the bottom left graph shows a peak discharge somewhere around 27,000 CFS. And that would be your 100-year discharge in that location. I think that these results maybe are from the frequency storm. We didn't update the presentation for the final result.
You have like telemetry out there that collects this data? How are you getting this data? Is this just pure simulation, modeling and simulation, or is there any data that you collect that goes into that
Model and simulation, yeah. This basin has a lack of rain and stream gauges to calibrate to.
Okay.
A lot of times we would look for rain or stream gauges to use for calibration. There's not a lot out here. We have one in Turkey Creek now, up in the mountain watershed, but that's only been in place for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years now. And so there's very little calibration data that we could do. That's why we did our own verification using other model methods, I guess you could say, that look at basin size, and I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. So the output shows for each 40 by 40 foot grid cell an average depth and average velocity, and then when we put those lines across those cells, we can record flood flow hydrographs as shown on the graphs below. Okay, so this is the verification step that we did. The USGS has a document prepared specifically for Arizona and specifically for, I think there are 5 or 6 different geographic zones that they have where USGS looked at a whole slew of stream gauge data and did flood frequency analyses based on those gauge locations. And then compared those to the drainage area above those gauge locations, the watershed size above those gauge locations, and came up with a set of regression equations that basically provide with one input of drainage area, you get your 100-year discharge. It's a real quick and sort of not quick and dirty, but it's a simplified method to come up with. If you know that. Your drainage area size, you can estimate your 100-year discharge based on that. And this is what, if any of you are accustomed to the term stream stats, this is what stream stats is based on. I don't know if any of it.
Yeah, we use stream stats all the time for floodplain use permits.
It's just an automated web-based mapping and data collection service. So one second, let me go to the next. I don't know. Oh, okay, there it goes. So this is. Yeah, I think they've been doing it. Oh, I'll just wave my flag. Thank you. Oh, it was off. Okay. Way to go, Mark. Yeah. Thank you. So this shows our validation, our verification process that we followed. For each of the green lines, that would be a quasi stream gauge, if you will. And then above those green triangles, we've got the black lines that show watershed boundaries. And this is where we could define, outside of the interbasin sheet flow zone where we have distributary and unconfined flow, these would be where we could define discrete watersheds to a particular location and then estimate the 100-year discharge for that location. And the green, red, and yellow dots on the graph show the results between our type 1, type 2, and frequency storm temporal distribution for 24-hour rainfall. And what we found was that with the green dots, the type 2 storm, we were getting better agreement to the lower dashed line. That is the 100-year discharge predicted by USGS regression equations, especially in those locations where we have the greatest watershed size. Say in the city of Wilcox has the greatest watershed size contributing to it. We're most interested in estimating discharge at those areas receiving higher flow. And so those CP 45 and 44 represent the largest drainage areas that we considered. And we got good agreement. Although it is low, you would expect a low discharge for a greater watershed size because of the microbursts. And oftentimes you're not going to get that widespread distribution of rain storms. So we had to kind of balance this between the high discharges coming out of the mountains and the too low discharges into the inner basin. So with the green dots, I think we got it pretty good for a 100-year storm, and we did 51 basins. Okay, this clicker works now. Thank you. This is just another potential ancillary benefit of our modeling that we've done. As I said, 40 by 40-foot grid gives us pretty good spatial resolution when we look at flood flow and the prediction for discharge and flooding events. If we compare this to our special flood hazard areas, but through FEMA, we see obvious areas where the special flood hazard area maybe was good enough at the time that it was established, but maybe could use a little refinement, in some cases. So this wasn't all across, but this is just some areas where we could see the hatched area sort of predicts or says a particular.
Yeah, the white stuff, that's Turkey Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the end of Turkey Creek.
So back to Joe, what we were talking about with the Gabion project, right? So this helps
This is going to greatly help that.
Yeah.
project, Yes.
big time where we start building the.
Yes.
Again, we start at the bottom and go up. Is that the deal?
Depending on the wash, but depending on what the erosion is. But yes, if you start at the bottom and slowly, if you're trying to
Okay.
restore the watershed,
So we can prioritize
that's what we're doing. Yeah.
based on this right here,
Yeah.
where we should get started doing that.
And what Lindsay's going to present after.
Yes.
So
The next
yeah.
presentation is going to talk more about that.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll hold off then.
That maybe gets to a little bit more of what we should do on the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Crosby.
I was wondering, are we becoming interested in collecting water in some other place than the playa, like where the crop circles are and where we want to grow alfalfa, or will that get us in trouble with the Gila River Indian adjudication business?
This watershed doesn't flow into the Gila River. So this watershed and the Douglas watershed, Sulphur Springs Valley does not go into the Gila River.
Okay.
Satsuma will.
Yeah, but this is just the flow so that it improves recharge, so that we can put more water into both the Douglas and the Wilcox
I'd
closed
like to do a stay like this.
closed basins. Yeah, that's kind of, San Pedro is a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
San Pedro, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's the Gila River Indian thing that they're trying to steal our water.
And as far as where, I refer to the playa, the perimeter of the playa as an outflow boundary. The playa is known to have relatively low infiltration rates, so we're not considering looking at projects within the playa itself based on
Yeah, it's like a
whole bunch of
concrete
other.
Yeah.
factory out there. It's like
Right.
solid.
So yeah,
And it's not good for recharge.
I hope that we can focus further up in the watershed.
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to get
Yes.
the water in the ground before it hits the playa.
And we've met with NRCD, NRCS, Cooperative Extension to talk about that, and pick the locations to do further study that we're giving to Cy and Lindsay to help analyze further.
And I think also too, this might help Jackie's group with, somebody comes in to pull a permit to do something, and there's a wash on site, and it's 500 CFS, I think, is the cutoff. Can we use, whether you can use stream stats, or maybe you could look at this data to say, is it a 500 CFS wash or not? So I think that this will help to inform a lot of what engineering natural resources does.
So are we going to hear from Ms. Watkins and the other PowerPoint presentation today, which had to do with the San Pedro side? Are we running out of time? What's
We might have to reschedule some of that, but yeah, we're going to let Lindsay go. We might have to reschedule that.
That's fine.
I don't
No
see
problem.
Lindsay's, Is it further up? Or it was the first one? Okay, gotcha. Oh, yeah, there it is. There's the Gabion.
I'm almost through to the end of my slide.
Sure.
Okay.
So,
It's
if we can go to the next slide, this clicker's, oh, there it goes. Yeah, thank you. So this is my closing. Essentially, we did detailed flow to the H&H models, and those are with the county now. We have looked at recharge potential, and that's what Lindsay's going to talk about here next. And then once we have a few sites that we can look at as far as potential projects, we can go back into our model and pull out a little bit more detailed information for those sites. Like I said, our floodplain cross sections, those lines, those strings together, grids were put in logical locations, but we can add more and then pull out additional further data. And yeah, so with that, I think we can go to Lindsay.
Lindsay should be. Is Lindsay online? Okay, good. Thanks.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you, Lindsay.
Hello. Okay, so should I just say next slide then and you guys will advance them?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm Lindsay Bunting. I'm with Geosystems Analysis based here in Tucson, Arizona. And as I mentioned, we are a sub-consultant to J.E. Fuller on this project. Taking it a step further and integrating this really valuable Flow2D mapping data with hydrogeologic data for the entire Wilcox Basin to kind of target areas that we can look at for doing managed aquifer recharge. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, yep. There we go. Okay, so we're all familiar with the Wilcox Basin and these persistent challenges. The motivation for this is to integrate groundwater recharge to improve our groundwater sustainability and also manage stormwater and mitigate some of that flooding hazard. So J.E. Fuller and GSA have been tasked with this pre-feasibility study to address these issues, and our goal at GSA specifically was to identify areas suitable for recharge, and we do this through a exhaustive review of hydrologic, geologic, and land use data sets. So what I'm going to focus on here is part one, which is the screening level suitability analysis. And then as Jackie mentioned, once we've identified some potentially suitable sites, we'll dig into additional data that's not included in this preliminary screening analysis to further evaluate the potential suitability for recharge at those areas. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so to identify areas ideal for recharge, we start with what we call a hydrogeologic conceptual model, and this is basically a framework that describes how water moves through the landscape and through the subsurface. So it incorporates variables like the climate, rainfall runoff relationships, soils, topography, the vadose zone, or that area between the surface and the top of the aquifer, geology, groundwater conditions, all of these variables that helps us understand where the water goes, how fast it goes, and how much stormwater we can realistically move into the subsurface. So this allows us to really target capture of runoff in areas that'll be most suitable and will optimize recharge to the aquifer. As a result, these are dependent on a number of variables. We need to be in close proximity to high capacity drainages. This is where the Flow2D modeling results come in really handy. We need to have coarse, like sandy or gravelly soil types to allow that water to move quickly through the profile. We need to have an absence of those low permeability layers that could restrict it from actually reaching the aquifer, and then significant vadose zone storage. So if you imagine the whole soil profile as a sponge from the surface to the top of the aquifer, we want that sponge to be sufficiently thick that we can store the captured runoff or stormwater recharge for it to get into the aquifer. And then, of course, because this takes up space on the land surface, we need underdeveloped or convertible land use where we can actually implement these facilities. Next slide. So there are a number of methods for how we can actually capture and get this runoff into the ground. The approaches vary a lot by scale. We can have smaller in-channel type systems like gabions and check dams. that help to slow the flood pulse through that drainage, allow it more residence time in the channel, and allow it more time to infiltrate. Or we can construct large surface spreading basins such as detention or retention basins that help to route that floodwater to areas with permeable conditions where we can get it into the aquifer. Floodmar is another potential option to consider, especially in Wilcox where agriculture is so extensive, where we actually divert floodwater into agricultural landscapes. These could be fallow agricultural fields or active farmland with tolerant crops. And then if we have situations where we might have impermeable layers near the surface or low permeability layers, we can bypass those with recharge enhancement features. So this is like dry wells, infiltration trenches, wick drains, things that allow us to get that water through the profile and where it needs to go. Next slide. So that's kind of the background, and I'll jump in now to how we actually executed this screening analysis. So this was a GIS-based hydrogeologic screening assessment, and essentially what we did is developed a really comprehensive geodatabase to start. So we looked at near-surface characteristics like soil permeability, the presence or absence of restrictive layers, subsurface characteristics like depth of groundwater, how much drawdown there's been historically from pumping, horizontal hydraulic conductivity, land use variables, and water availability. So we defined what all these criteria were and sub-criteria to include in our ranking analysis. We assigned weights to them to make sure that we're not double counting similar properties, and applied ranking values. So what, for instance, is considered a good permeability value? We want high infiltration rate, greater than 1 foot per day. That would get a +1. That's essentially ranked higher. So we apply all of these various parameters to each individual parcel. We discretize the whole basin based on the Public Land Survey System quarter section data. So this means we've got 40 to 160 acre size kind of pixels distributed across the whole basin. And then we sum this all up to calculate a composite ranking value. So a less suitable area would be a more negative number, the least negative being, or most negative being -4, and +4 would be the most suitable. And then because there are certain data that we don't have spatially expansive data for that covers the whole basin, like that Vados zone, for instance, is a bit of an unknown. We have well drill logs where we can look at distribution of soil properties with depth, but we don't have any sort of geospatial data set that compiles that all together. So that's part of the second phase where we dig into other data that wasn't included in this to look at suitability. So the green highlighted boxes here are the ones that I'm going to focus on because that's a lot of parameters to go through. We don't have time to talk about all of them, so I'll just highlight one from a few of the categories. Next slide. So this map shows the near surface characteristics or permeability, and this is sourced from the NRCS soils data for the top 6 feet. So the map on the left shows the estimated soil saturated hydraulic conductivity, and blues and kind of green colors are the highest and orange and reds are the lowest. So this shows you areas where the surface soils are most permeable. And then the map on the right shows this attribute after we apply the ranking classification. So most suitable areas with high permeability would be colored green and least suitable would be colored red. Next slide. And this map shows one of the subsurface characteristics, which is the drawdown from pumping. So the map on the left shows simulated drawdown from pumping between 1940 and 2015 from the ADW, the most recent ADWR groundwater model. And the dark green contours in the center there, just southeast of the playa, you can see our significant groundwater declines. And essentially what we do is we rank these areas as having the greatest need. There's been the most groundwater declines there, so we want to rank these areas high for potential locations of recharge sites. So we can see after we apply the attribute ranking, the map on the right shows these green areas as ranked high and red areas basically further from the agricultural centers where there's been less groundwater withdrawal as lower priority. Next slide. And then the last one I'm going to highlight is this water availability parameter. So this is proximity to large drainages. The map on the left shows the major drainages within the Wilcox Basin, and then the Flow 2D depth raster for that 100-year flood event is shown in the middle map. And as we expect, the flow depth is greatest within the major drainages, so those darker green colors represent greater flood depths. And what we did was applied an attribute basically saying that an area would be ranked high if more than 10% of that parcel has a large drainage in it with more than 1.5 feet of water. So this allows us to highlight continuous drainages known to carry large amounts of water during these large flood events, and prevents us from ranking high areas where maybe there's like a little puddle or pond or surface depression that allows water to accumulate there and doesn't actually represent a continuous drainage. So you can see that when we apply the ranking to this, that map on the right shows these large drainages like Ash Creek. Turkey Creek is having green areas because they have large continuous flow areas. And the goal here really is let's site recharge facilities near the areas where we have the stormwater runoff. This minimizes infrastructure costs and maximizes the suitability. Okay, next slide. All right, so this map shows the highly ranked parcels. This is basically the composite ranking review after we've applied all of these sub-criteria into one composite ranking value, and it's color-coded across the map. So lower recharge suitability scores would be these reds and orange colors, and then greens would be the highest. And what we saw is that the highest ranked areas tended to be concentrated along these major drainages. This is partly because they have a high water availability ranking score, which is to be expected, and also because we know that these alluvial streams tend to have coarse-grained materials in the near surface, and therefore more suitability for recharge as well. There were a bunch of areas within the basin that had really highly ranked scores. Those pink stars represent areas that had +4 or maximum potential ranking values. There were 18 total sections that had these perfect scores, and those are all shown, just a screenshot of that table right there. And then if you want to go to the next slide, this just shows what this looks like on a finer scale if you zoom in. So this is an example highly ranked area, Turkey Creek East, and you can see we have this continuous group of a bunch of +4, perfectly ranked cells along Turkey Creek that, based on this screening suitability analysis, would be well suited for capture of stormwater and recharge. So this is really helpful. It provides a super actionable tool that can be referred back to for decades to come. This is all based on hydrogeology. It's not changing anytime in the near future. So this is a really great resource, I think, for landowners and for the county to refer back to, and a great first screening step. There are additional steps needed. If you want to move on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we're going to dig into the data further for, I think, up to 5 or 8. We'll see how many sites Jackie's group ends up identifying. We'll dig further into data. We'll look into stakeholder, agency, landowner engagement. That's the process we're in right now of identifying folks who are interested in collaborating on construction of recharge facilities. We'll look into the well logs and deeper vadose properties to make sure there aren't any fatal flaws there that would prevent recharge water from actually reaching the aquifer. We'll look further at groundwater levels, groundwater quality, any irrigation and groundwater use characteristics, and operations and infrastructure considerations. And then just to note, once a site passes this Part 2 detailed review and we say, it checks all the boxes, we don't have any fatal flaws that we're seeing here with this site, we've got engaged landowners, everything's coming together. There are still future phases. This is all a screening study based on geospatial data. We still need to do a field investigation to confirm the suitability. This could be a mix of geophysics, test pits, boreholes, whatever we can do to actually physically characterize those soils and make sure they're suitable. And then, of course, engineering and design is another future phase to consider. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's
Why get to this part?
Pardon?
When we get into this part.
I'll quickly get through the rest of it. I'll switch. So we have met with the property owners in NRCD, NRCS, to pick locations that we have and so to do the next phase on those. Flood control, different partnerships for the grade control structure, the Gabins, watershed management policies, with the NRCDs. We do have a meeting tentatively scheduled for October 20th with NRCDs, all the 4 NRCDs in the county, to pick Gabions and to work with them on that.
So let me expand on that one a little bit. So on that meeting, we're trying to get everybody that's focusing on the same type of projects in the same room to make sure that, you know, we're not missing anything. If they have any other ideas on how to do this Gabion check dam infrastructure, what's the best way to move forward? What's the best partnerships going on there? We are working with the legal department on, you know, see if there's still options to legally give the Gabions to citizens on certain projects and help them with those as well. So that is still ongoing. Like Jack said, in October we had that meeting, and I think we'll have a lot more coming out of that on the next steps.
How about like the situation we got north of Pomerine Road there that we've been talking about, where that guy has put in that subdivision?
I do have photos and stuff to talk with you.
Yeah, but I'm saying, for example, going forward with these future development projects, is there a way that we could work with those developers to put in that architecture as they build those subdivisions?
That's not a platted subdivision. That's a lot split wildcat unregulated subdivision.
Okay.
So on subdivisions, yes, there is one subdivision that just across the street there on Pomerine Road, that is the tentative plat that's going to the Planning and Zoning Commission next week, and then it will come to the board. When those type of subdivisions, platted subdivision comes in, yes, we do have regulations for them. The unregulated lot splits, we do not have regulations. Then the other one we have here is Turkey Creek with the San Simon NRCD. They have a WIFA grant for $562,000 and Flood Control District with $250,000 to do a grade control structure to help protect the bridge, the first bridge on Turkey Creek. So what we're talking about here is Gabions and rock check dams. The photo on the right, that's typically what's done during road construction, is you have those grade control structures to help decrease the erosion. That's in a roadside ditch if it's on a steep incline.
Yeah, but how about doing that like further upstream, right? Have the gabions lower, then go
Yes,
those going
correct.
all the way up the stream.
And that's what the NRCS's grant is going to do on Turkey Creek.
And it's using local rock that they get from around the stream, or do we truck it in?
Both. Depends on what size you need. On some of these you need, if you need a 24-inch boulder, typically those aren't on site, that we would truck
So
those
those big
in.
ones that are wrapped in the net
And the
there,
Gabions.
truck.
The Gabions, but the Gabions you can use smaller rock, because the Gabions, as long as the rock can't get through the wire,
Oh,
you
okay.
can use 4 to 6 inch rocks on the Gabion basket, depending on the velocity of the stream.
But yeah, primarily we want to use the rocks on site if possible.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that's done up Turkey Creek that's been done by the ranchers up there, that they're on site. Those rocks are on site. Coyote Wash, we've talked about before. We opened bids on that last Thursday. That will be going to the board next week. I will be on vacation next week, but the apparent low bidder,
And
yes,
Yeah.
this is the apparent low bidder was just over $5.5 million. Jay Fuller, I was the designer on that. So our cost estimate was, they were lower, they're about 300,000 lower than what our estimate was. So it was a good bid. And then they will start in November and do the roller compacted concrete for the outlet structure and the inlet diversion channel in December.
Mr. Chair,
I don't like concrete. Go ahead, Mr. Crosby.
yeah, I wonder, looking at this page number 5 that we're looking at right now on dot number, looks like 6, support water management and conservation goals. So Ms. Watkins, could you tell us what net zero water consumption means for anybody that doesn't know?
Well, net zero water consumption, if you're talking about groundwater, would mean that the inflow is equaling the outflow, pumps out is equaling what is being recharged naturally or by constructed recharge basins that the county has.
Okay. Do you envision successful net zero water consumption? Is that one of our conservation goals?
It would be a goal. It would be hard to achieve, but
Not
that
gonna
is a goal.
Not going to happen.
It would be impossible. Would it be clear to say it is impossible to use water without using water? Can we all agree on that? I wonder. So there's not going to ever be, so is net zero water consumption part of the 321 report that we used to hear about, and are we still supposed to do a 321 report to Congress, or do you know?
That was the city of Sierra Vista's on their EOP, so and that is no longer required to be reported. I think that was just for a 10-year time, but that would be something I'd have to ask the city of Sierra Vista.
Without
Okay.
without bringing water in, there's no way we're ever going to get there. That's always been my contention. It goes back to 15 years ago when I was in the legislature. We identified this issue. We have to bring water in. You're not going to get enough rainfall.
I agree.
Drought or no drought. Even if we weren't in a drought situation, you're not going to get enough rainfall. You gotta
So,
bring
Ms.
water in.
Ms. Watkins, I had another question. Would in the San Pedro River aquifer, would that aquifer level decrease even if there were no humans here?
There were
If you're
what?
in a drought, it would.
No.
Oh,
no people.
We're in
No.
over a 20-year mega drought, so the water flow naturally in that river would be low because of a drought.
Okay. Well, I think that from what I've heard, and I'll try to go find it. It was one of our presenters that we had before, and this presenter, who has a PhD, said that if there was no humans here at all, the water level would still decrease just because of gravity and the nature of the soil and so on. It would still go downhill with gravity no matter what. So thank you very much.
So the Coyote Wash is with grants. All of the whole cost is with grants from Governor Hobbs, a REPI grant for the DOD, and a WIFA grant that we have.
Huh.
Bisbee.
This BF what?
So we have a border recharge of Bisbee Effluent Project. So we did buy the property.
Yep.
And now they have a grant. The city of Sierra Vista has a grant that we can use for investigation. And so what we're going to investigate is, well, there's a wash that goes through the property, so we can do recharge without stormwater. We will investigate, we could, the water quality to pump water from the deeper aquifer up, and then testing and find out what the potential still with the Bisbee effluent. But that's in the future. First of all, the next step we have is just to investigate the property itself. Where would be a good location? What is the ground recharge availability on that parcel? So that's the next step we would do.
We can improve it though by drilling if we have to, right?
Yes, and that will be what the investigation is.
Oh, okay. So back to what we talked about before. I don't think Mr. Crosby or Ms. Gomez will because of the open meeting law. I was looking at, the Tempe Town Lake in Phoenix is a recharge, an affluent recharge project. So to alleviate some of the concerns of the residents in that area that are worried about direct pumping of the Bisbee effluent into the aquifer, which I get that. Look at maybe creating a multi-stage lake, let's just say, where we pump the raw effluent into an area where we collect solids and they float to the bottom of a lined lake or pond, and then it flows over to the next one, which is
The recreation have on the Tempe Lake.
Right.
And it's not raw sewage, it is treated effluent.
right. It's treated effluent, but it goes through a process before it gets in there and whatnot, and then that then slowly seeps in, and then there's another one that's like a marsh that it flows into that's even higher for recharge. So we don't really put it directly into the.
It's not going to be directly discharged into the river to begin with. It will be through a treatment like the wetlands that the city of Sierra Vista has. They have wetlands that they treat their effluent
Right.
and then put it into a recharge basin. So that's what we will be investigating in the next
And
phase.
that's Tempe Florida. I mean, that lake, I've been there many, many times. So that water just seems to be fine to have recreation, boating, and all that
Correct.
stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then,
Somebody's husband, I won't mention any names, swims across it, so I mean, it's,
and nobody comes up.
But again, I get where the people in the neighborhood there are concerned about it. I mean, but what people don't realize is those processes, the natural process of water filtering down through various stuff, and then ultraviolet light. That's the other thing. The other thing is the sun does,
Helps clean it up.
yeah,
and
remarkable. Hold steel in sunshine was an old saying.
And they're investigating, I mean, in the world, different enzymes that help clean up, even the forever chemicals. They are, that is a hot topic that science is trying to come up with a solution.
So this would just, the Bisbee effluent is, they were just thinking it's just going to go right into the ground, near the
That's
west.
the misconception.
And there's
No,
like,
that's not.
That's not going to be.
It would
That's
go
not-
into a recharge basin to begin with.
I mean, if you look at the map now, you can see both Benson and Sierra Vista have that recharge where they have those pools after they go through what are those big round?
Yeah.
Settling,
Yeah.
they go through the clarifiers, and
Right,
then they go into polishing what they is the wetland,
Mhm.
and then that flows into their recharge basins.
right. It's a stepped down
Gravity.
process. So it's got to be
Mr.
conveyed.
Chair, I had another question for
Sure.
Ms.
Sure.
Watkins, and that is, are there other sources of effluent under consideration for the Palominas area property besides Bisbee effluent?
The only one for this property is the Bisbee effluent. The Riverstone property is the city of Sierra Vistas.
And there's no knock, we're not going
How about
No,
that?
no.
How about that big subdivision there? What do they do? Where's their affluent go? The one with the rain,
It's septic tanks.
yeah, septic tank.
It's all septic system.
So the one in Douglas, their food system that they've been getting the water to Pumpas or whatever down there, they're now going to redirect it over towards.
Only part of it, not all of it, right?
They're wanting to do some recharge down there also. Yes.
Okay.
Some of that water's might be going to the POE for construction water.
Right, right.
Yes.
Okay.
But yes, they are they're starting to investigate what they can do for recharge on their effluent also.
I'm not sure they can use that water
Yeah.
for construction too.
Yeah, they will be using some of that
Oh,
water
good.
for construction on the port of entry for their site work.
Because now, a lot of that water over there is, they found high levels of arsenic, right? I mean, that's kind of the other issue.
The groundwater in that basin has arsenic naturally. Yes,
Because the one on the Border Patrol Station, they had to shut down.
because of, I'm not sure on the
Yeah,
Border
I
Patrol
know.
Station.
Okay.
But yes, there are wells in there that have been tested for above the 10 parts per million for arsenic.
Okay.
Get some Rasputin action going there.
Oh, boy, now it's Bay Acres.
Next slide.
Next, sorry.
Yeah. Next slide. So Bay Acres is in design. And we will have that design completed at the end of this calendar year. Depending on the cost, I mean, we're talking, $17 million possibly. We'd have to get right away so that we would try to get grants. So we wouldn't go any further on the Bay Acres project until grants. There are some back tax parcels that would be in the flow line for that we are starting to acquire now. So we acquire any property that's in the flood zone that's for back taxes. But Bay Acres then, once the design is done, we would go for grants.
So the people that have those parcels that quit paying their taxes, was that because it was in the flood zone and they couldn't build on it and they just,
It's pretty swampy down there.
Yes,
yeah,
That
they
area.
just said,
Yes.
I give up and just,
It's a Palm Grove wash itself.
It's in that pond that we were looking
yeah,
at.
there's no real
It's-
development purpose for those properties, right?
Not in that location, just
Right.
because of the water.
But people have built anyway.
Some people have built in there. There's one house that's got, 4 feet up in the air because it's got a moat around
Right.
it.
So when we talk about Bay Acres, remind me again, it goes from like 23rd now Street to 80 on Washington Avenue and kind of around there?
Yes.
Okay. So
for the
as the city decides to keep on annexing, which I think they want to, and they said, well, if you pave the roads, we'll annex. So I'm concerned about paving roads that they then want, like they did 23rd Street, right? So I was looking for 26th Street
Mhm.
and I was having heart, but it was so muddy. I went on Friday.
I wouldn't drive down 26th Street.
I was in Friday like, oh my gosh, but it was so flooded in that area. So this is the study that you say you're going to do at the end of the.
So the study's done. We
Okay.
will have 30% plans, Tim?
Working towards 60, I think.
60% plans? Okay.
And that could be
60%
really
plans.
crucial, doing these things up like by D Hill and Saddle Gap, right? Because that's where the water.
Yeah. So this would be a channel on the west or the east side of Bay Acres that would go north-south, then turn to come back down into Palm Grove Wash.
Because that Palm Grove Wash, part of it's on private property,
Palm
right?
Grove Wash is all on private property.
So, and we can't do anything because then it enhances their property value of the people who own it, right? That's what we were talking about, the issue of just clearing it out so the water can
Correct.
through. So how do we deal with that? I mean, if Palm Grove Wash is really intricate to having control of all this flood water, and yet it's full of brush, and the attorney says we can't go in.
We'd have to buy the right of way.
Have to buy the right.
Yeah, because Palm Grove, the washes aren't owned by the county. I mean, we don't own washes.
What if the people would give us the right of way and not charge us just to be able to have the flood issue in control?
If it was a regulatory flood, we would do that if it's over 500 CFS, because we don't regulate small washes and we don't have the funds to control all the stuff that's on small wash. So our regulatory discharge is 500 CFS. So if it was 500 CFS or higher in a place that had potential for development that would enhance the economic value of the adjacent lands, then yes, flood control could come in and do something on that.
That one wash that we were looking at that was privately owned, that went into Palm Grove.
That goes, yeah, that's a tributary to the Farm Grove, but it wasn't that high of a lot. It wasn't 500 CFS.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have another comment.
Sure.
As I've been saying, my view has been consistently Bisbee effluent should go east towards the Whitewater area. That concludes my comments.
Interesting.
Large pumping costs, but
That's what?
next slide.
Large pumping.
Leslie Canyon Pond. So that's the one that's the regulatory dam, jurisdictional dam that will have design. So we'll have design plans done by the end of this calendar
This
year.
was the one that used to be there, right?
No, it's still there.
Well, that's what I mean.
There's Rucker Dam.
What was
Your thought was Rucker Canyon Dam. Now, this is just north of Douglas, east side of Leslie Canyon Road. This was a platted subdivisions in the 60s that said, come sell your homes here.
They had the woman, on the skis,
Yeah.
waving to everybody on the huge lake.
Yeah, it's a 40-acre lake.
That was a huge scam.
It was a scam, but
And people brought a lot of property, because I know some of them who did, and then
we have back tax
back
properties
taxes
on
on
that because,
right?
out of 200-300 lots, there's maybe 20-30 that are built on. They're tiny lots.
Yeah.
So some of those we get for back taxes also. And this project, once it's designed, we're still trying to work through ADWR. That's kind of the hiccup on this, is potentially they might have some funds for us too. But flood control, this is one that flood control really, we do need to get this fixed. Okay, next. Rucker Creek Watershed Study, that's a Corps of Engineers study. So they have $300,000 from today's fiscal year. Then their fiscal year starts tomorrow, and they are doing a watershed study to help the flooding in Elfrida. So there's two different grants, one to do the study, the other one to help pick a location that we could do a recharge flood control project. And then the design and NEPA clearance. Potentially, Corps of Engineers have funds for these. Some of those funds are decreasing, but if we can find, we will get a grant to do that project. Okay, next. Pomerine Road Watershed Study. We are doing that study now, and that's to help decrease the flooding across Pomerine Road itself. Same type of concept possibly that we're having for Bay Acres with getting it into a channel on the east side of Pomerine Road and putting in a smaller channel to take across. We've also talked to the property owner there that's on the west side, and he's willing to work with us also to put in some kind of ditch on his property that then he would maintain if we build it. That will help divert the water to keep it off the road, but we have utility conflicts there, and that's still not going to control the water flowing across the road. So we have the two different projects there. Next. Oh, and this is Davis Road. That's milepost 9 that has been fixed.
That has been fixed.
That has been fixed.
What a
But
difference.
that's, we have now 5 and 13. That will be on the next presentation that will start soon, since we're late. Sorry.
All right.
Okay.
Yes,
And
very much.
so, so we do have a quote for, to do this.
Okay.
Are you on or any other
Is
questions?
it another separate meeting?
There's-
Yes.
Yeah. And
So we're, oh,
We need to
that's
close
the
this
engineer
one.
meeting. Okay, hang on. So this would be, okay, this one here.
Real quick
Okay, so
update.
we are going to adjourn the work session for the flood control district. Adjourned, all right?